So welcome everyone. This is the final session of CHCMHS011. We've got our last lot of PowerPoints. We've still got a couple of breakout rooms that we're going to do this afternoon that will be based on questions that you have. And I did forget to show you my response to power dynamics. So I'll do that shortly as well. That might give you a little bit more insight into power dynamics. All right, some of you are traveling quite well. Some of you are behind. I always say to you, look, if you are behind, go back to the one that you started with, or some of the ones that you got at the start, so that you can work through them. I think when you've done 1 or 2 units, you really get the hang of it, and it's not as frightening as what it was to start with. Because, I mean, we can get 1 unit and we can give up really easily. So I think most of you are still traveling okay, which to me is amazing, because you're doing it on your own to a certain degree. Yeah, so, you know, hats off to you. Well done. Good work. All right. So we are now recording. Nobody has come to the door as yet. So we're going to do a little bit of sharing. I'm going to let you have a look at what I did with the breakout rooms, as far as, have a look. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to look at power dynamics and show you these. So with our power dynamics, just waiting for that to change. There we go. So with our power dynamics, we went into a breakout room and we discussed it, and you discussed it really well. I was very happy with what you came back with. But what I wanted to show you is just a little bit more with the impacts of power dynamics. So everyone has power. We may not feel that we are all powerful at different stages in our life, and sometimes we can feel completely powerless. All right, but we all have power. We have choices, we have free will. So that gives us power. So power dynamics is the science and analysis of power negotiations. So when people say they took my power away, or they drained me of my power, that's something that you've got to think about. Did I put up enough screens or protect myself from someone that can do that to me, that has that effect on me? You may have met some of these people during the course of your life, and you do tend to lose your power in that. There's a lot of people within industry that use that power in their positions for either good or bad. Sometimes they don't know that they're creating chaos, but it's good to self-reflect on. So power dynamics is the relationship between people that involves the use or the lack of power. Power can be formal and informal. It can relate to economics, politics, social, and psychological. So power dynamics can affect the structure and behaviour of individuals. Absolutely it can, when you look at authority. Put it into that context. So groups or institutions can also do that. Now, mental health used to have lots of institutions. That has now changed to a certain degree, and we are very happy that it has changed for the better. So power dynamics can be healthy. Who rules the roost in your home? Have a think about that. Power dynamics can be unhealthy, depending on how power is distributed and exercised. Power is about somebody taking over. It's the ability to influence or resist. Power can relate to money, muscle, status, intelligence. Can usually successfully influence other people. Look at politicians, look at lobby groups. When a person or group or authority has substantially more power than others. think of a situation where maybe at work, some of the workers have had more authority and you feel less powered. Some people can empower you, other people can disempower you. So power dynamics, when a group or personal authority has substantially more power than others, we've said that. So power dynamics are the balance or imbalance of a relationship. So remember that, because if the power ratio is not there, there is an imbalance. And that can happen a lot with our clients, with the people we work with. We might want to maybe domineer them a little bit in a way that we're helping them, but they don't understand that. So you have to be really careful with your power dynamics. It can lead to coercive power, positional power. It can also be something that can really disrupt your workplace and play a critical role in shaping overall work environments. Have you ever been in a work position where there was a power imbalance? I can see the facial expressions on some of you, and I'm going, okay, yep, you know about that. All right, good. So how do we make that better when there is a power imbalance? Sometimes we can't change anybody else, I say, but we can guide them and nurture them and maybe let them know how they're making us feel. So there were some of the things that I was going to discuss in the last breakout room about that power dynamics and how it can be quite damaging. All right, I'm just going to stop sharing that one. And I've got nobody else coming in. Very good. All right, now I'm going to share our slides for the day. Where are we? Here we go. All right. So if we have a look, this is the last packet of slides that we have. That sounded really old, didn't it? So assess and promote social, emotional, and physical well-being. So that's what we're going to be looking at in this session 3. So have a look and think about your social, emotional, and physical well-being. Which one do you concentrate on more? Which one doesn't get concentrated on at all? So have a think about that, because at the end we'll be doing self-reflection, and that's a part of what that needs to be. How do you treat yourself? All right. There he is. All right. So session 3, we're not jumping off any cliffs. We're admiring how high we can grow when we have a good mindset. Would anybody be willing to do our welcome to country tonight to save my voice? And I'll get it up as soon as I can find my mouse. Would anybody like to do that for me? All 14 of you.
Yeah, I'll give it a go.
Good on you, Lachlan. Thank you. I thought if I kept quiet enough, somebody would go, oh, I suppose I better do it. Good on you, mate.
In the spirit of reconciliation, Hayes Institute of Education acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to the land, sea, and community. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people as the first inhabitants of the nation and the traditional custodians of the land on which we work, live, and study. We express our gratitude for the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual, and cultural cost of that sharing, and hope that we have moved forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. We pay our respects to all First Nation people and acknowledge elders past, present, and emerging.
Brilliant, Lachlan. Well done. Thank you so much. That was excellent. Okay. So you'll know when I mark your work, Lachlan. No, that's not necessarily the case, but I will keep that in mind. Don't you worry about that. I say, cameras on, please. I know that you do. Yes, you do. No, you don't. Look, as I said, if I could turn mine off, I would. So you didn't have to put up with me. So yeah, no, if you can, well and good. Love to see your faces. Microphones on mute until you want to speak, and then please take them off, because I love that interaction. Now, our class breaks 7 to 7:10, 8 to 8:10. What do you feel about that 2 10-minute drops in the ocean? Is that Is that suitable for you? Does everybody go, yeah, we've done it for long enough now, we're happy with it? Yeah, it's okay. You didn't want any longer? Yeah, get it over and done with, I say. Okay.
Yeah, I'd personally rather just even a 15-minute break in the middle, and then
Even yeah, well, it could be 20 minutes, couldn't it?
Go 10 or 15 in the middle, and then just one break, and then we might finish that 10,
Do you
15
reckon?
minutes earlier.
All right.
Yeah, that's just me personally, but
no, well, hands up. You've got little hands. You just have to press a button, or you can put your own hand up. Yeah, good. All right. So what do we reckon about that? Only 2 participants raise their hands, right, Nelly? Okay. So you would prefer, say, a break at what about 7:45 to 8? All right. I'll put it to the boss. I've got to put everything to the boss. But where's my little sheet for tonight? Will be here. I'll just put that down. All right. So we're looking for breaks. Maybe one. You'll all sort of have to agree to it. So if there's any, no, I certainly don't want to do that, then send me an email. But I'll go breaks, could be 7:45 to approximately 8 p.m. All right. We'll see how that goes, because we're breaking protocol. But you are in control of your studies. You don't get much control, or it doesn't feel like you have much control. So I'm going, if we can give you control now, then that's a good thing. So I'll see how that goes, and I'll let you know next Tuesday. Now, next Tuesday is a new unit, WHS. It's workplace health and safety. If anybody in the room has worked, you know that workplace health and safety is up there with the best of them, and everybody is responsible. All right. So if you wanted to talk, please put that hand up, and I'll try and make sure I see it. All right. Respectful relationships with everyone. Be respectful in the breakout rooms. You can learn a lot from other people. So don't dismiss them, regardless of who they are or what you believe they may be. So no smoking or vaping on camera. If you're triggered by anything, we do have we're working with mental health, and that can sometimes make us doubt ourselves or get a bit of anxiety about what's going on. So if you need to move away or go and have a little walk outside, a bit of fresh air, do that. Always be kind to yourself. Always. All right. So let's have a look at what they believe social networks are. So you're going to have to write about this when you are doing Mary in your role plays for this unit. You're going to have a look at you're going to have a look at all these things with Mary. So depending on how old Mary was, but wouldn't it be nice to know what sort of education Mary got? How far did she go? What did she achieve in that? Did she enjoy it? And then we're going to have a look at, well, what did you do, Mary? What was your occupation? Were you just a stay-home mum, or did you have a powerful job? We don't know these things unless we start asking these questions. And as a support person, you want to know all of this stuff. You need to know. How am I going to find suitable things for Mary to do and to participate in if I don't know Mary? So if you don't know your young person, how are you going to support them? And the best way to know is to ask them questions. Now, you might get the normal answer, which is, I don't know. Good luck working with that. Then you have to start asking more questions, because it's easier to say, I don't know, than to think about anything else. So what did Mary do for employment? Was Mary a part of the community? Did she play a community sport? Did she go to a church? Did she participate in anything to do with community? And you won't know that unless you ask her. But sometimes when we've got someone in front of us, we forget all these domains because there's so many of them. So I want you to have a little list when you go in with Mary, so that you can ask questions about different things. Now, Mary may have been a volunteer. A lot of women were volunteers while all sorts of history was being made. It was normally the women that were the volunteers. That has since changed. And we've got a lot of retirees that like to go out and volunteer. If you've never volunteered before in anything that you enjoy doing, I would suggest you think about it, because it does put you in touch with other people and what they do. So volunteering is very beneficial for us. It's like giving back without it costing you too much. Okay, so what did Mary like to do as far as hobbies goes? Did she knit? Did she crochet? Did she paint? Did she jigsaw puzzles? What did she do as a hobby? Now, these are all things you're still going to ask the kids. May not be employment, but you're still going to ask them these things. So what are your hobbies? What do you like doing? Can't do any because I'm studying at the moment. That throws every hobby out the window. So study becomes the hobby. Yep. At least you get something at the end of it, like you do in a hobby. Does everybody know what a hobby means? It's nothing to do with Middle Earth. Okay. So a hobby is something that you like to do and you do it. Who collects items? Little figurines, cards, gaming games. You know, sometimes we collect things. Music, that's a bit of a hobby of mine, collecting music. So there's all sorts of things that can be put into that hobbies. Gardening, Mary might like gardening, may not be able to do it anymore, but she might like to visit a garden. Personal interests. What do you like doing? What is it that interests you? Now have a look at every one of these sections, these social networks, and put yourself in there. What are your social networks? Your education, I know why you're doing that. Your employment is various. You would connect with community in some way, maybe. What is that way that you connect? You may volunteer. You don't have time when you're studying. You may have a hobby that you haven't got time because you're studying, or some sort of personal interest. Now, that personal interest can be walking the dog, feeding the animals, looking after my animals. It's a personal interest. You need to have something in all of these things at some stage. It helps us remain social. If we stay indoors for too long, we can't get outside because we forget how to act, or how we need to keep ourselves safe and things like that. So these are social networks. So when they say, oh, what is their social well-being? Well, golly, let's break that down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 domains. And then we can get a good picture of them, but we haven't stopped there. We have not stopped there. We're going to explore this more. So if you look at employment, ideally an individual is usually employed in an area of interest to them. Maybe we just fall into employment sometimes. It just happens. It's not what we sort of wanted to have, but it's there and we're doing it. All right, nobody else is coming. Good. And then we can look at, what are the skills that you got from that? Because you'll get strengths from employment. Whatever that employment is or was, you can gain strength from that. Just let this person in. So that's very important. Your employment's very important. Now, don't think that your employment has not given you skills to work with young people in a support position. Because anytime that you have served somebody else as a customer or in any form at all where you have assisted someone, those skills need to be replicated in support work. Education usually gives us our interests. So you guys were interested in youth work, maybe supporting, helping. It might be to gain further career opportunities. Whatever it is that has made you want to be further educated, remember that purpose, because we can do another quiz and we can go, I am so over this. So make sure that you remember your purpose for doing your study. It's not something that you should take lightheartedly, and it costs you a fortune. I have got a HECS bill that is, I don't know how I'm going to pay it back. Why did I do that to myself? Not sure. But still, make sure that you remember that your education is purposeful. There is reasons behind that education, and don't lose sight of that, because we can give up really easily. And we need to be realistic about our goals. This is how I'm going to achieve this education. But as far as Mary goes, well, Mary, what did you do? I went to school, to grade 7, and that was the end of that. And that was my education. So then Mary's education would be outside of school. Now, how many people have left school early and all your education had to be done outside of school? Usually we learnt the hard way. So education is a form of getting us to where we want to be. It is purposeful. Remember why you're doing this study, and it will become not as much as a challenge. I'm doing this because this is where I want to be. So volunteering. Hands up the people that volunteer. Yep. Have we got SES in the room? Fire brigades. It could be I'm a JP, so I volunteer signing documents and witnessing documents and things like that. There's numerous places where we can do that, and sometimes that gets us out of our comfort zone and actually makes us consider others. So think about volunteering, because it can be that social connection that you need. And maybe we can put Mary in a social group of volunteers who cook scones or something for the local fire brigade when there's a fire. There's something that we can get Mary to connect to. We need to think about that. Now, your church groups do a lot of volunteering. They're always putting people out there to do good in the world. So that is always good. And I think Mary was keen on her church. She just, when you can't do something or you're on your own, you tend to not do it. It's like when we live alone, most of us will not feed ourselves properly and probably end up with some sort of disease that we shouldn't have got because we should have fed ourselves better. But when you're on your own, you don't tend to do that. The animals will probably get fed before you. So we've got to remember Mary is isolated. So then there'll be a lot of things that aren't going to help her. And usually with volunteers, they usually bring a plate to share. And that can be amazing because some of them can cook really well. All right. So we're still exploring the social networks because they're huge. They're huge. So explore in the community your current involvement as an individual. What do you do in your community? Do you teach kids how to play a sport? Do you participate at the local school? Are you a P&C person? Do you volunteer at your local club that you go to or something? That's all a part of that social connection, especially sporting groups. There's always been research that has said the more you engage with others, the happier your life will be. Now, some people we don't want to engage in, they say, conversations with your neighbour. Well, maybe you may not want to do that. But if you can have good relationships with your neighbours, it does make your life a lot easier. All right. So meeting people as you go out. If you don't go out, you don't meet them. So interests and hobbies, usually take an individual on what they do on the weekends. So, you haven't got a hobby, but what did you do on the weekends? I went dirt bike riding, or I went to the movies, or I went somewhere else to watch something. That sort of becomes a hobby. That's something that you like to do. Mary, I think, played soccer. So Mary would probably like to watch soccer. So that would be something that maybe we could take Mary to if we wanted to get her involved, and we could put her in the tuck shop of the soccer grounds, maybe, if she wanted to, if that was a thing that she would like to volunteer in. So always remember that you need to ask questions to get this information from people. They usually forget. They usually forget the different domains. Oh, social, yes, I go to church, full stop. Oh no, there's a lot more to that than what you think. So the questions that you need to ask are all about those topics. So even if you're going into a role play with someone for the first time and you have to ask them, and you already know what's wrong with them, but it might be that, well, let's explore your social networks. Let's have a look at that. Look at these 6 domains that we can find information about you that we might be able to then help and support you with. So it's really about finding what Mary's all about. Right, nobody needs to come in. Very good. So we need to map their social networks. So I've got a little notepad and I've got all the social network domains in there so I can talk to them as she's saying something to me, because it might go from community back to volunteering, back to hobbies, back to interests in one sentence. So we need to make sure that we cover all of those domains. And look, and if you had case notes that covered those domains, I would be over the moon with that. Absolutely over the moon. So making sure that we are mapping their social network. Map your own social network. What is your social network? You might find that it's really quite sparse and you didn't even realize that studying has isolated you. Or you can look at your social inclusion or exclusion. So what do you include yourself in? How do you go about being inclusive socially? How do you go about being socially aware of your connections within society? It's very, very important. Very, very important. So think about yours. Now they talk about social media in the next slide, but we're not doing that tonight. So we're going to go straight back into strategies for enhancing our social network. Now, we can't make people do things. People need to do things because they want to. It's about giving Mary her dignity of risk, her self-determination. It's about empowering Mary into doing things that she liked, that she doesn't feel quite comfortable or self-confident enough to do on her own. Now, Mary can be 16 years old. Mary can be 66 years old. Doesn't really matter. The strategies to enhance their social networks are reasonably similar. But when we talk about training in that area, you need to find empowerment in yourself as well as try and empower your clients. Some people will accept you in trying to empower them. Others will neglect it or will push it away. It just depends. If you built good rapport with your people, they can be empowered by you if they trust you. Now, your interpersonal skills are going to play a big part when you're trying to extract all this information. Mary might turn around to you and say, you're asking a lot of questions. And your answer to that, or a young person might say that to you too. So your answer to that is, I need to find out about you. So I need to find out how I can best support you. So I need to know all the things that you are and what you like, what your goals are. Some young people have trouble trying to find goals. Have any of you got a current goal right now in July, middle of the year? Have you got a goal besides study? Is there anything else that you have put to yourself? I would like to achieve this in a certain amount of time. It could be eating better, looking after yourself better, getting more sleep, reading a book. So there's all sorts of ways that we can make sure that we keep ourselves in a state where we can help others. Now, interpersonal skills can also relate to your listening skills, your active listening skills, the way you respect somebody, the way you greet someone, your tone of voice. What else can interpersonal skills look like? Your body language can come into that. How you hold yourself, whether you stare down your client or whether you are sitting with them in the present. Where you sit with your client is also an interpersonal skill. Yep. So there's a lot of things that go into that. The role plays will help you immensely be able to talk to people on a level of questioning. Most of us don't sit with someone and go, well, tell me about your hobbies, what you do in the community, where you used to work and where you went to school quickly. We don't normally sit down and do that. So we're bombarding poor old Mary with these questions. But if we tell them at the start, I need to get to know you. I need to find out about you so I can best support you. So I'm going to ask you all these questions. And if you can answer me as honestly as possible, we'll put a really good plan together for her. And if we can make Mary happy at the end of the day, that's our emotional well-being. So that's really what we're looking for. But as far as giving you the skills to be able to talk to people, your role plays will help you. They're hard to do at the start because we fumble over words, but they really do give us more self-confidence to be able to go, well, these are the questions that I need answers for, and this is how I need to respectfully deliver those questions so I get a respectful answer back. So, yeah, interpersonal skills are huge. Can anybody else think of an interpersonal skill before we move on that they have noticed, either within themselves or they've noticed somebody else do it and gone, that's really cool? Anyone like to talk to that?
Is like holding space one of those interpretal skills?
Yes, interpersonal skills is being what we call in social work, being in the here and now, where you are actively listening to that client, you are focused on them, they are leading the conversation, and you are walking with them in their journey of that conversation. So absolutely. Well done, Sky. Good work. And the more role plays that you do, the easier that comes. When we do something for the first time, we're going to stumble and fall and crack our head on things and things like that. But we need to go, well, that's how I learn. I need to get up and just keep moving on with it. I will make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but I need to recognize those mistakes so I don't keep making them. It's when we're blind to our mistakes that we make more. And we can't help people when we're blind to ourselves. So we need to know who we are. So a lot of these things, reflect them on you. How do you empower people? How does someone else take your power away? So think about those things. Now we're going into the emotional well-being. Only 3 circles? Can't believe it. Emotions, got to be kidding. All right, so our emotional well-being. We're looking at our self-care. What do you do? What do you do? What are your support systems? And what are your relationships like? So we can provide information and resources and support to clients that promote emotional well-being. And they may include things like, Mary, what do you do for self-care? And Mary might go, depending on her age, what are you talking about? And it might be, well, Mary, what do you do to make you happy or that you like to do? And we're sort of back to those hobbies, aren't we? Or the church, or some of the things that she used to do. So those support systems. I go, if we want to have really good self-care, we've got to have healthy relationships. Well, that just falls to bits. So we've got to think about who was around Mary. I think Mary's on her own, so she's socially isolated. So she's really desperately probably wanting a healthy relationship. So natural supports that occur around people in everyday life include regular interactions. And that can be in things like gyms, cafes, libraries. And I go, okay, gyms, cafes, libraries. Well, I go to the gym. I don't talk to anyone except the trainer. I go to cafes. I get my coffee and run. I go to a library. Very rarely do I speak to somebody at a library. But still, it is still being out in public. And that's what some of us can't do. So think about some of those things for Mary. It may not be a gym. We may not put her on a treadmill, make her go 100 miles an hour. It might be a yoga class. It could be water aerobics to support her body if there's any pain and suffering that she may have. So think about that sort of things for self-care, because we do self-care, I believe, can have devastating effects on us if we don't do it right. Like if we over-medicate because we think we're doing the right thing, or we under-medicate because we think we're doing the right thing. That can be very dangerous. We can get hooked on painkillers very, very easily because it stops the pain. But then we have a hard time trying to relieve that. So our mental health is not supported in those ways. But there's your other domain, emotional well-being. 3 domains that I want you to write to when you're speaking to Mary. She may not say much about them, but we need to make sure that we've touched on them. Now, these, as I said, these can also relate to you guys. You know, how is your emotional well-being? And I go, well, when I get a quiz wrong 3 times, my emotional well-being is probably not up there where I'd like it to be. It's probably getting squished. But speak to your trainers, we can fix that. So don't think that is a problem. All right. But sometimes when we're not in a really good emotional space, we can't think logically. And everything goes to muck because that's how we see it. I don't feel well, so my emotions aren't right. I've just had a breakup. Something else has happened. A bill's come in that's not, and we just go, that's too much. That's too much for me to cope with at the moment. So what do I need to do? Break it into small bits so I can cope with it because it's all happening at once. And then just sit back and go, right, what can I control? What can't I control? So self-care has got a big deal to do with your mental health. And if you're not doing anything for your self-care, I want you to question why. Why aren't you? Why aren't you? And there's all sorts of reasons why we don't. And we're going to have clients in front of us that don't really know why their emotional well-being is hit the roof. So think about your own. Always put yourself in other people's shoes or relate stuff back to you. What's getting in the way of my self-care? Because if I can't, like a first aid person, if you can't help yourself, how can you help someone else? And we all want to be a support person. So we need to make sure that we've got our own supports in. So I can't stress it enough. It is extremely important. Extremely important. Now, what is our time? All right, okay. And I'm up to 13. All right. Now, the YouTube, I want you to watch it. It only takes 2 minutes. Please watch it. We won't be doing it in this session. And I'm going to go into our breakup rooms shortly so that we can stay on our current break times. All right, mindfulness. What is mindfulness? We talk a lot about it. We go, oh, the new age, oh, mindfulness. Oh, that's really good. It's about being aware of self. All right, it's our cognitive aspects affecting our well-being. Now, what might one of those be? Oh, I can't get this quiz done. I am so useless. What have you just done to yourself? You've just squished yourself all by yourself. Nobody had to step in, help you do it. You just squished yourself all by yourself. So what we need to do with that is go, I didn't get that right. What questions did I get wrong and why? And I think it comes up with that when you're doing it. Okay, let's go back and try that again. Or come away from it, come back later. Sometimes when we get things wrong too many times, not only do we want to give up, but we have to stop, move away and come back. It's a coping strategy. It's like when we say to the kids, oh, if you're getting bullied at school, you should turn around and walk away and probably get hit in the back of the head. But it is a coping strategy. But I also look at other coping strategies which may not be as good, and that's fight, flight, and freeze. So they're our body's coping mechanisms, and sometimes they can happen without us giving it permission to happen. It can all of a sudden be on us, and we can absolutely freeze in a time where we need to be running, but we've frozen. So we need to be aware of that. When does that happen to me? How can I make that better for myself? Because I get really angry with myself for doing it, but I can't seem to stop it. So how am I going to work through that? That's finding coping strategies for yourself. Mindfulness is a part of that, because I've just used mindfulness to go, why did I do that? Why did I say that? How can I do that a better way? So it's very, very important that we make sure that we increase our resilience by making sure we look after ourselves and we think the right thoughts. Because when we call ourselves useless, worthless, an idiot, dumb, whatever it may be, it's usually the negative that we default to. We are labeling ourselves. Do we want to do that to our clients? No, we absolutely do not. And we wouldn't, would we? We may think it sometimes, but we've got to overlook that. Oh, bias is jumping in. Got to rethink that. So we must be very, very careful about how we react to different situations and be mindful of how we react to different situations. Mindfulness has an absolutely positive effect on the well-being, and it gets us to think about the current moment instead of the past. It doesn't help us, or it doesn't let us categorize thoughts as good or bad. It just makes us look at positive visualization and maybe how we're breathing. Because when we're angry, so we've all been angry, how were you feeling when you were angry? Were you breathing deeply and your body was relaxed and everything was okay, but I'm as angry as hell? Some people can do that. Most of us can't. So we have to be mindful of what our body is doing. And then when we realize that, we can pick it up in youth. What is happening to their body? Oh my God, their shoulders have come over, their head is down, they've just about got their head on the floor, no eye contact whatsoever, they're shallow breathing or they're breathing really heavily. You've got to look at that and go, okay, we need to give this young person some coping strategies so he can survive these moments of unrest. And it might be something that he's just pushing through his mind. Nothing may have triggered it. It just might be his own thoughts creating this horrible situation within himself, making him think that, or her think that they can't do what they need to do. Relaxation. So how many of us could say, today I thoroughly relaxed for 5 minutes? I would say, Natalie, were you asleep for 5 minutes today?
No, I played really mindfulness computer games.
All right. I'll have to agree with you, because sometimes to relax, we need to concentrate on one thing and one thing only. And that can help us relax. It's like staring into a fire. We lose the thoughts and we just are there. We're just being. Gaming, yeah, it may be relaxing for you, but someone just coming into it that doesn't know how to play, it would be the complete opposite of
It's like
relaxing.
Connect 4 though, so it was really fun and simple and I loved it.
Good work. And sometimes the simple things give us the most joy, but we sometimes forget that. So remember that in Mary's case, sometimes the simple things. It might be, Mary, have you connected with your sister lately? Maybe you need to do that. How do you connect with your sister? Wouldn't be writing anymore, might be emails, like maybe, or it might be that phone call on the landline. Who knows? And then we come to self-compassion. Well, self-compassion is there when you stop telling yourself how bad you were at whatever it was that you did. That is self-compassion. Self-compassion is about, hey, I didn't get it right this time, but you know what? I'm going to try again, and I'm going to try and make it work. And if I can't, then I'm going to have to throw in some more strategies because I need extra help with this. That is being self-compassionate. So it's about treating ourselves like we're our best friend. Would you say you treat yourself like your best friend? Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe you've never considered that. You are your best asset. Okay? You are your best asset. And to have coping strategies in place, mindfulness in place, being relaxed at some point during the day, and having self-compassionate thoughts about you will make sure that your cognitive ability will remain well. So think about that with your clients. If you're working with a young person that comes up with all these negative defaults about themselves, try and change that. Point out their strengths. Make them mindful of when they say those things so that it can be acknowledged and then changed. All right. Very good. Now, this next video, I want you to watch it as well. It goes for a little bit longer, I think, but the 3 elements of self-compassion she talks about, it is lovely to watch, and I would suggest that you do just that. I'm talking too much. All right, so we're going to do a quick breakout room because I talk too much. And I'm just going to stop sharing. We're on 15. I'm going to stop sharing. And then I'm going to share again. And let you see what we would like you to do with our breakout room for the last session. Not that one. This one? No, power dynamics we've done. Here we go. So it's session 5 of our breakout rooms. That's awful. So breakout rooms. And we're going to talk about what we've just talked about. So it should be pretty falling off your tongues. What is social and emotional well-being? Now, they're different. So I hope you're taking notes, some of you. And if you didn't, well, enlighten the people that come into your group. So this is your breakout room question. And it is in your notes. And I will have my spiel at the end of it. Hopefully I don't forget it. All right. So what is social and emotional well-being? I'm going to stop sharing and open up the rooms. Breakout rooms. Here we go. All right. So we only have 20 odd people in the room. So I'll go 3 rooms. Sign automatically, but sometimes that doesn't happen. All right. So it looks like I've got Ali, Amber, Philip, Melly, Rose, and Val in room 1. And I'm going to open up those rooms in a minute and hope you all just disappear into them. So in room 2, we've got Amber, Grace, Jay, Kristen, Susan, and Trent. And in room 3, we had 6 in every room. I can't believe it. We had Caitlin, Emma, Emma, Lachlan, Natalie, and Sky. Now, if you don't want to go into these rooms, you don't have to. It's not compulsory. But I go, if you can get any information out of anybody else to help you with your study, do it. All right. So we're going to stop recording. Okay, so you've just come back out of your breakout rooms, and I'm sorry about the mix-up there. Would anybody like to talk about the topic that we gave you in the breakout room?
Yeah, I'll hit it just because I want to
Good on you, Sky. Well done.
Okay, so for us, the concept of social and emotional well-being refers to the holistic approach to health wellness that encompasses both social and emotional dynamics. It recognizes that individuals' well-being is influenced not only by their physical health, but also their social connections, emotional resilience, cultural identification, and spiritual connection, sense of purpose, and a belonging.
Brilliant. Well done. That was really good. Really good. Excellent. Would anybody else like to say? We're a little bit running a little bit late on time, but anybody else like to mention anything about their group? Did they discover anything that they didn't know?
So we've kind of been learning about the whole social and emotional well-being. And I think we all kind of understood it a little bit, but then we just started asking each other what we kind of do for our own social and emotional well-being.
Brilliant.
So
Brilliant.
that's kind of where
Did you learn anything new about people? Did they come up with something that, oh, never thought of that?
Yeah, well, between the bouncing of the breakout rooms, we kind of just, yeah, we did that.
So I heard, what? Where am I?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So what was one of them, Trent, that stood out for you?
Well, I only really got to listen to one person, and they like going to the football with their friends and doing a few other bits and bobs, yeah, footy, pubs, get out, hang with your friends,
It's a social thing, and it always was a social thing.
Yeah.
The pub. Yep.
So
Good work. Good work. All right. I'm just going to share my screen before we go on. Excellent. Thank you, Trent. Good work, mate. And it will be that one. So let's have a look at what I have picked up from that. I'm just going to move you guys over a bit. All right. So can you all see that? Social emotional well-being. We always like to abbreviate everything, and then we go, what did that mean? All right. So it's a concept of the impacts of social and emotional well-being on our mental health. But it can also affect, to me, if we've got mental health problems, that affects everything else, especially the physical as well. It's a strength-based approach. There you go. It's a strength-based approach, especially if we're supporting Aboriginals and Torres Strait Islander people. Holistic methods are more in line with their culture. So impacts to mental health can include the lack of confidence and trust in self and others when we don't have social and emotional well-being, and we end up with it affecting our mental health. We nearly always have poor self-esteem. We can sometimes engage in risky behaviour, substance abuses. The feelings of hopelessness, reduced in self-care activities, there you go, which leads to depression, anxiety, stresses, not necessarily in that order. It's usually the other way. Stress, anxiety, depression. It affects our sleep and concentration. Changes in behaviour, withdrawal from community and friends, isolation and loneliness, and disempowerment. We can sometimes have suicidal thoughts and end up being hospitalised. So there's a lot to be said about our social and emotional well-being. And I don't think it is talked about as much as it should be, especially in psychiatry, in psychology. They don't look at things as social workers do in a more holistic way. So as support workers, I want you to take that on. And if you go to further studies, then how much further evolved are you going to be with that? All right, so I'm going to stop that sharing and we're going to go on a break, and I will stop recording while we go on that break. Okay, so we're continuing on after our first break. Oh, I'm just going to admit Olivia. Okay, I don't think there's anybody else that needs to come in. All right. So what I wanted to do with you for about 10-15 minutes was have a look at Mary and the role play within this unit. So I'm just going to share my screen if I can and see if I can get the information I need. Okay. Not those. All right, just bear with me and I'm just going to move you all to one side and minimize that and find what I need here. Right, our task 2.
Was there a
Right.
role play in this? I'm struggling to find it myself. I've just got 19 questions.
Yeah, so we were looking at Mary, and let me see if I can find Mary. Help from supervisor.
There's a few
Instructions.
role
Thank
plays
you.
for Fun Sky.
All right, hang on. Here we go. All right, so we are looking at, let's share my screen. And where did I put it? Okay, it didn't come up. Let me get out of that again. Just there it is there. So why didn't that come up? All right, I may not be able to get to it, so I'll have to have a look at the one that I've got here. So I had it up today. All right, so if we have a look at Mary, Mary has been isolated. So we need to do a client record on Mary. And when we're doing that client record, I want you to think about all the domains that we've worked on so far with that. Now, I'm just going to have another look. No, I think that will just confuse you, so I'm not going to do that. All right. So bear with me. We're going to have a look at our... I'm going to share my screen again. And I'll find that in our next break, I think. So we're going back to our points, which were having technical difficulties at the moment. All right, so there they are there. Just going to bring them up and minimize them so that they stay on my screen. No, that didn't work. Stop sharing. Okay, bear with me for a moment. Just going to stop recording. Okay, so let's share our screen. It's on. Thank you. Too many things open. All right. So our other domains that we're looking for. So we're looking at the cultural and spiritual well-being. So it might be, if we're relating to Mary, it might be, what were some of the cultural activities and networks that you were involved in? And this would be a leading question into Mary letting us know that she went to church. And she hasn't done that for a long time. Which means that she's not actually practicing her culture. So we may find that that has made her feel more isolated. And if we can connect her back with that church, it might mean that we can create that good link for her. So when we have that cultural and spiritual well-being, we don't feel as isolated and lonely as what we were, and we can feel that sense of belonging. It's like playing in a team. You do feel that sense of belonging. All right. So our cultural and spiritual well-being is just as important as our emotional and social well-being. So if we have a look at our cultural and spiritual well-being and the client, we have to think about, do I know what their culture is? Do I understand it? Do I need to find out more about her culture? So we need to ask questions. We need to also educate ourselves on what culturally diverse practices are and how we can be culturally inclusive of others and remember their culture and their spiritual being. So we need to make sure that we're aware and we're across what some of the cultures believe in, their beliefs and their values, because that will help us to be able to help Mary. So she hasn't been to church, so she's actually lost a bit of touch with her culture and her spiritual activities that she was doing. So we may need to reconnect her with that. Now, to do this, we need to extract information from Mary. So we need to have good communication skills. We need to be able to speak to Mary in a way that is going to get her to tell us things without feeling that we are encroaching on her personal space. So we have to make sure that that we're doing that, and we're still being respectful of her ability to be able to tell you everything in one session, which is usually not the case. So by checking on their spiritual and cultural well-being, we are forming a relationship and we're interacting with the client, but then they can also interact with others by doing these things. So it's very important that we reconnect people. So we can provide information about cultural and spiritual activities that may be suitable for them. We can really ask Mary what she would like to do. And so it's really our client's focus that we need to make sure that we're working on. And if somebody has a culture that we don't necessarily think is a good culture, or we don't think we don't believe in some of the things that they do, that's not our place to put our bias or our opinions in there. We just need to work with that client and work around their cultural and spiritual well-being. So we need to put our judgments to one side. So has anybody got any ideas where a clash of cultural and spiritual well-being may happen with a client and a support worker? In what instance may that happen? Anybody give me an example?
Two different faiths, maybe somebody's Christian and maybe somebody's First Nation Aboriginal, or Muslim and First Nation, something like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So religion has a big part to play in that, but it might be some of the customs of that culture that goes against some of our beliefs. So can anybody else think of something that a culture does that maybe an Australian viewpoint would see as a bit strange? What could that be?
Sorry, again, I think it's a little bit like some religious practices where they wear like the hijabs and things like that. Australians can be seen to kind of make comments.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well done, Natalie. So clothing, food, though we do embrace everybody else's cultural food, I dare say. Some of it we may not like, but most of us will eat different cultures' food, but we may not dress like them, and it may be disrespectful to dress like them. There's holidays that they have that we may not participate in or even agree with, but we honour that they have got that in their culture, and we use that as a bit of learning for ourselves. It might be the arranged marriage. That's something that we don't see as reasonable in Australia. So that may be a part of their culture that we may have a bias with. So there's all sorts of ways that we can let our own feelings get in the way. All right. So we need to review. Everything we do when we work with people, we have to review. We have to look at ways that can help us to be better at everything that we do when we work with other people, because we literally have their lives in our own hands. So recognizing recognizing progress. And that can be in your own self. It can be progress in the client as well. So remember our stages of change model. There might be flipping back and forward between different stages. So keeping out new directions and strategies, consulting with other industries can give us new direction and maybe new strategies to use. Because sometimes we can be using an old strategy that is not working with young people. It might be too outdated and it needs to be refreshed, renewed, reviewed. All right. So if we look at contingency plans, can somebody explain to me what a contingency plan is?
Is it like a plan to save you if your original plan doesn't go well?
Thank you, Trent. That was brilliant. I love the way to save. Absolutely right, mate. Absolutely right. It's like, you know, we go, oh, this is plan A, but this is plan B in case plan A doesn't work. So that's your contingency plan. Most organizations, every organization should have a contingency plan to what happens if the world shuts down from a disease that hasn't been made yet, but could shut the world down. What is our contingency plan for our organization? And nobody had one because no one was expecting what was going to happened. So most of us didn't have contingency plans. So a lot of the RTOs went into basically lockdown, and it was just online. You could not speak to anyone or give them a piece of paper or anything like that. So it completely changed the way that we taught. There's a lot of things that changed during that, but there are now more contingency plans in place than there ever has been because of what happened to us during COVID. So contingency plans are good for your projects when you're putting projects or presentations together. If something doesn't work, what can we do? If the people don't turn up, who's our backup? So it's like a backup plan. It's a contingency plan. And we have that in our stages of change because, well, what about if this doesn't happen and they go back to contemplation? What can we do in that space? That would sort of be a type of contingency plan. Well, we can look at this We may have to go in a new direction and find new strategies, but that may be our contingency plan. It might be that we need specialist expertise in certain areas when we're helping people. So we would refer them to others to help them. Because if we're a support worker, we can't really be their counsellor, even though inadvertently we become that, and so do teachers. That happens to teachers a lot. Happens to the hairdressers too. So, but they ask too many questions, that's why they get the answers. But it can really be something that you need to put into place to make sure that that is something that you've got a bit of a backup. So if you go to the residential property for your shift and you find one of your employees on the floor with blood coming out of their head, nobody else is around, what's your contingency plan? What is your movements now that things aren't going as smoothly as what they should have been? So we need to put those into place. And it could very well be that you need one in your jobs and what you're doing. So what would be the procedure if that were to happen to you? Do you go into shock? Do you go into freeze? Do you go into flight and just take off? Or do you know what you need to do in those circumstances? Which would be ring 000, ring your supervisor. So developing and documenting goals and plans for either clients or organisations or yourself, it's very good to have that backup contingency plan. If I can't get somewhere, how am I going to do it? Yep. All right. So all organisations and clients and yourselves have all got goals and plans. We need to make sure that we can keep them going and move them forward. It's also very important when we're doing anything as far as your presentation goes, your role plays, is to evaluate and to really have a look and see what worked well, what didn't work well. And it's also important to take up follow-up actions, which is sort of what we do in an evaluation, but it's a next step over when working with others to ensure correct action has been taken. This is to make sure that the needs of the individual are met, the individual is supported and encouraged, and ensuring that other service providers, I'll just let Amy in, other service providers and or their family members are doing the actions required of them, and so that they can also ensure that everything is working smoothly. Now, this may be that a family member is actually causing the disruption within a family. So we have to be really careful with what we're doing with that. But there will be evaluations on most of your work, and by doing evaluations, you get the feedback that you need to be able to respond to certain situations, and it's a growth mechanism. And so is this. This is reflecting. So reflecting on practice. What do you think that might mean, reflecting on practice?
Sorry.
Oh, Amy, I thought you were going to come out with some brilliant statement about reflecting on practice. That's okay. Yeah, well, reflecting on practice. What did you do well? What didn't you do well? What could you do better? What would you stop doing? So it's about being reflective of your work. So it's a way of learning from our mistakes when we reflect on them. It's when we don't reflect on our mistakes that we keep making them. It will help us to improve and strengthen our self-confidence and our self-worth when we're able to reflect on our practices and take constructive criticism in a way that it was meant to improve us and to improve our practice. So reflection can be individual with colleagues or supervisors, and you do a lot of debriefing in this work because you have to, you need to. You don't hold anything with you or take too much home, because we need to make sure that we stay happy and healthy ourselves. All right. So reflective practices allows us to evaluate and think of work experiences and how we can improve to ensure that we continually learn. And it requires being honest to ourselves. Are we doing what we say we're doing? You need to be committed to improving. And I think in life, that should be what we strive for. Always improving, always getting better at whatever we try to do to make us more confident with ourselves and give us that motivation to keep going and do more. And when we're committed, we become motivated. It's reflecting is a practice of in improving self and situations for that matter, because if we improve ourselves, we can improve the situations that we get into. So identifying strategies to self-reflect or to reflect, feedback, debriefing from supervisors and colleagues, even it may even be a teammate that you just need to put something past or ask them about something. So other strategies might be that you reflect on certain areas of your own life to improve your performance at work. They look a lot at, well, maybe we should make a shorter week so people are more productive in the time that they are at work. It might be having rostered days off so that we can come back to ourselves and reflect on our practices and give us time to make that connection with what we need to improve. Because sometimes we never look at ourselves as needing improvement or thinking that we don't need to improve, when sometimes we just need to self-reflect on how I can do things better. So it's very important to reflect, and you will be doing a lot of it in support work. They will want you to do it, they will make you do it, and they will expect it. So reflecting does have a positive outcome, taking time to understand what happened and why, especially if you have a critical incident. That's always a really good time to reflect when we do have those critical incidents. So recognizing if a client's needs are outside your scope of practice, and there's going to be times when that will happen. That will happen. Identifying the roles that you took in experiences. Who were you in that critical incident? Were you a bystander, or did you become involved? What did you do? And then sometimes we can reflect on that and go, I shouldn't have got involved, or I should have got involved. So it will depend, but that's what we can think about when we reflect. It identifies our roles that you took in that experience. You know, what role did I play in that? Did I antagonize the situation and make it worse, or did I calm the situation down and it was more positive? So we can do that as humans. We have the ability to be able to do that. We need to recognize our own behaviors, our emotions, and our thoughts. And if we don't, we're not reflecting. So how did that make me feel? I know it sounds like kindergarten stuff, but we really need to know, how did that make me feel? When we're triggered, how does that make you feel? What happens to your body? What happens to your nervous system when you are triggered? So if we can recognize it in ourselves, we can recognize it in others. So exploring the impact of the experiences and whether it was positive or negative. Sometimes self-reflecting can be really hard to take. It can be really hard to take. But the more we think about it and the more we reflect on ourselves and being that better person and reflecting that in our professional practice, the better will we become in every other section of our lives. So it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. So looking at, you could have make a real difference. So what they're trying to say there is, if we look at ourselves positively in our reflection, even if there's things we need to improve, we don't need to put a negative spin on it. We can make it a growth plan where we make improvements and we discuss with other people strategies that we can use that maybe they have used to improve our professional practice and how we deal with critical situations, which you will come across. So planning for improvement is about that reflecting, exploring the impacts. We've mentioned that, and it does make you look at things differently. Now, there's a bit of a reflective cycle. So how to examine your own biases by using this reflective cycle. So what was the event? Describe it. What happened? It's the first thing we say to somebody when we find them in distress. What happened? The first thing we do as a first responder or a first aid person. What has happened? Describe what has happened. And you've got, we're doing workplace health and safety in the next one. This will be something that you will need to put into writing. What happened? So how did you feel about that when it happened? And evaluate those feelings. Were those feelings coming from a trauma perspective? Were they feelings that came from empathy? Were they feelings that came from a deep-seated resentment that you have? Tell me about these feelings. What are they? And then we can evaluate them. Once we know what they are, I was angry, disappointed, and upset, and it made me feel sick. Well, let's evaluate those. Can we put those into context about what happened and how we're feeling and evaluate how we could do things better if that situation arose again? And by doing that reflection in our evaluation, we can then analyze that data. What do I need to do to make things better? How can I improve me and the situations that I find myself in? And then we can put it all together with a little summary, a conclusion. And through that conclusion, we can find actions. And that becomes our reflective cycle. It goes round and round and round. So whatever the description of is the critical incident, how do we feel about it? Let's evaluate those feelings. Let's analyze what happened, the feelings and how we felt about it, and we'll analyze that. Then we'll come to a conclusion, and then we'll find actions and solutions to put in there. Because if we don't act on something that's making us feel really bad, how are we going to improve it? How are we going to shift those feelings? So we need to work on it. We need to reflect. I really need you to watch this. Please watch this. This is about the reflective cycle, and he'll go into more detail with that. Very important that you watch these videos in this last section of these PowerPoints. Very, very powerful watching. So that's something that you would do in your own time. And let's have a little bit of an overview before we go into our breakup room. So in this session, we looked at social well-being and social networks that help our social well-being. We looked at emotional well-being and really analyze what makes us happy and what makes us sad. Our cognitive aspects affecting well-being. What are we thinking? Is it our thinking that is stopping us from changing or improving or stopping our motivation? Because what we say and what we think, not necessarily what we say, but what we think can have a big impact on what we do and how we do it. We've looked at the cultural and the spiritual well-being. may not fit everyone, but you can guarantee there will be something within that your clients will mention. We need to review our professional practice and what we do, and we need to reflect on what we do. We need to sometimes change our approaches to practice. It might be that we need to be a little bit more client focused and let them lead the conversations. We might be taking control and not letting them speak. So have a look at the video, the reflective cycle, and how to examine your own biases within that. But that will give you more understanding of what that is all about. All right. The strength-based activity we don't do in this particular session, but it's just a little warm-up activity that I don't think we need at nearly 8 o'clock at night. All right. So it is, I'm going to stop sharing there, and I'm going to stop our recording. All right, so we had a little look at consent and what that is about in your breakout rooms. And why I put that in there is not only do you have to do it in every role play that you do, you have to think about it with every client that you have. So it is very, very important that we look at consent. Who in their rooms, before we go on a break, would like to discuss what they talked about consent?
We talked about asking for permission to work with them and for them. Consent for sharing any information. And also like consent around, we discussed right at the end, consent, like if they're physically and mentally able to give consent, what that looks like if they're not.
Excellent. Well done. Because that, if I'll put it out to the group, if you've had a couple of drinks, are you able to give consent? Depends on how well you drink, doesn't it, really? If you're completely inebriated and you can't stand up, can you give consent? Thank you. If you are 14 years old with a 17-year-old boyfriend, can you say, give them consent? Oh, you can't.
Depends on the state and territory. In mine, you can.
Can you? There you go.
Yes, ma'am. Which is why we left that out in our group chat. We said, no, we're not having that discussion with age. We just leave it blank.
Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in and say, look, I'm in the same situation. My work at the moment, I do have a young person who's confided in me, and told me she's pregnant. She's 14, but the dad is 19.
Yep.
And I was researching last night, and in different states,
Isn't that crazy?
it is like in some states it's classed as like rape because of the age. In other states it's classed as consensual.
Correct. Yep. So how do we get that so wrong? Hey, how do we get that so wrong? But anyway, you will always follow your state or territory that you work in. You can't go, but in New South Wales, they do it like this. That won't matter a zip if it doesn't happen in where you're working.
Can I ask a question,
Yes,
please?
Emma, sorry.
Are there Romeo and Juliet laws in Australia?
Explain to the group what you believe Romeo and Juliet laws are.
Well, my understanding is, say the age of consent is 16, which it is. If they hook up with like a 17-year-old, it's got to be very close in age, is considered a Romeo and Juliet law, so they can't be done with statutory rape. If it's like 18 and over, they can be done, but 17, it's very easy for a boyfriend to be 17 or a girlfriend to be 17 and the one not to be 16 yet. Like they can't be 15 and 17, but they've got to be like close to being 16 and like 17 or something.
We usually say 16 in Queensland. So yeah, that's when we consider that you may be able to give consent, but is still a great area there. Thank you for sharing that. That's really good. Would anybody else like to say anything about consent before I bring up the last slide? Okay, good work. I'm going to share my screen if it's going to work for me this time. And I'm looking for my breakout rooms. Okay. So let's have a look at that. What is consent? Consent occurs when one person voluntarily agrees to the proposal or desires of another. That sounds like something a lawyer would say, doesn't it? Consent on one occasion does not mean consent has been given for future activities.
I like that. We didn't think of that in our group.
Mm-hmm. Consent can be given and withdrawn at any point, regardless of the nature of the relationship. So we have a right to go, no, sorry, no, it's not happening. I'm moving on. We had that right. Everybody has that right. Consent is only obtained from people who are of legal age. So a 4-year-old cannot give you consent. Consent is a transaction or a contract, an exchange where someone gives or receives consent. Consent can be learnt through age-appropriate conversations. Consent is law. I speak to kids daily on consent. It is a big deal, and it does help to put in perspective that I just can't keep asking people for things in the schoolyard that aren't appropriate. So they need to know that consent is necessary. But most kids would not know what consent was. So teach your kids what consent is. There's some myths about consent. Talking to kids about sexual content can lead to risky behaviours. So telling them about safe sex can lead to risky behaviours. Telling kids about sexual content can keep them safe. I've got an 80-year-old lady who is still dealing with the fact that her parents did not give her enough information to keep her safe through her life. She's dealing with it now at the end of her life. Whew. Okay. If someone doesn't want sexual advantages, they will say no. Someone is asking for it based on what they are wearing, behaving, or where you meet them. Doesn't give you the right. If you don't consent, it's up to you to speak up. Sometimes we go into freeze. We just shut down. We can't speak. Sometimes we go along with our peers and get in a situation that we didn't really want to be in, but we ended up in. You only need to check the first time? Absolutely not. You need to check every time. All right. Consent to touch someone. You know how sometimes we'll pat somebody on the back, or we'll rub their back, or we'll, grab hold of their arm or something like that. That's actually touching someone without their consent. I know it's weird, and I know it's going a bit far, but that's what that is. We shouldn't touch people without asking them. But how do you do that? A man's gesture was to put out his hand and for the other man to shake it. So yeah, it's a bit tricky, but consent is very important. Now, when we are in all our role plays, we ask our clients if we can have consent to give their information to another organization. Very, very important, because if that client comes back and says, you did not get my consent, that's why we always like to get it in writing. I don't want you to do what you did, and I'm going to look at ways to complain about that. And so there will be some sort of conflict. So remember that consent is very important. And a part of our consent is also confidentiality. So we need to make sure that we tell our clients about confidentiality and their privacy, and we need their consent for all of that. All right, very good. Now I'm 3 minutes over, so we're going to go on another 10-minute break. So I will see you back in 10 minutes. Thank you very much. Move away from your screen, stretch, yawn, stretch out your body, have something to drink or eat.
Can I quickly say something?
Yes, Amy, of course you can. Stop
I
sharing.
wanted to touch base on one of the myths. I think the
Yes.
one that kind of like stood out to me was what someone's wearing. A lot of people would think that, you know, the person is asking for it, or the
Absolutely.
person giving consent to you, you know, like going ahead and doing
Yeah.
whatever that you're wanting to do.
Absolutely.
Which is-
Sometimes it's a bit of a belief that if you're showing too much skin, you are
Then you're
asking for
asking
something.
for it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely. Well done, Amy. Well done.
Yeah.
But I go, well, the fashion of the day is, so how can that be a thing? We should be allowed, we have a right to wear whatever we want whenever we want. So if I want to dress up like a man,
100%. But I think people are
I
looking at
can.
it from a
I don't expect
broader.
people to make a comment. Hey, Amy.
Yeah, I think people are just looking at it from an outside perspective and looking at it as if, okay, this person, she's wearing a crop top and a and a short skirt. So yeah, of course she's gonna want it if a guy is going to, like, you know, grope her or whatever, and anything, which is not the
Yeah.
case, you know? Because if a
Absolutely
guy,
not.
yeah, because if a guy
Absolutely
did that
not.
to me, I'd possibly punch him in the face or anything like that.
Well, Amy, I try to get you not to do that because that may get you into trouble, Dom. But I go 5 flight down, run, get out of there. All right, well done. Okay,
Is
go and
that
have a break, guys.
Still like a
I'm just
very
going to stop
much-
the recording. Sorry, Sky. Okay, thank you. So we've just returned from our break. We are in the final stages of CHCMHS011. We've done our breakout rooms and had some really good discussions through that. So what I'm going to do now is what I was going to do before, but I had to divert, is show you the role play for this particular unit. Look at that, worked like a dream. Okay, so I talked about Mary the whole time. And here is your role play. So there's parts to it. So the role play can be played by another learner, family, friend, colleague. Your trainers can also do it with you. It's a 2 people role play, so it's not as taxing on you emotionally as it would be if there was many people there. But whoever you get to play Mary, it's your first meeting and you are her case manager. So the student is the case manager. I read that and it doesn't quite read quite well, and I thought that's not a good way to start it, but you're the case manager, Mary is your client. So the purpose of the role play is for the student to build a rapport and find out more about Mary's situation. This will help them develop the wellbeing support reflecting a recovery-orientated practice. All right. So when you look at your work and what you're going to do with Mary, you are working from a recovery-orientated practice. You are to provide your consent, fancy consent being in there, to all information being shared with service providers and sign any documents provided to you. Consent is nearly always in writing. All right, we always need that evidence, just like your study. We need the evidence to know that you understand what you're doing in this space. You can use the following talking points to assist. Well, I go, this is what we're going to discuss. This is her presenting issues. This is what we need to work on. So every dot point has got a couple of things in there. So the very first one that you see, Mary is feeling socially isolated and disconnected. What is the well-being domain that is not being satisfied here? She expresses a desire to participate in more social activities and to seek help in finding new social opportunities or groups to join. So she wants to. What stage of change is she in? She also shares her interests and preferences for social activities and expresses a willingness to explore new activities or groups, including soccer and netball. So at no stage do we really know how old Mary is, which is challenging at this point in time, but we know she likes sport, but she's socially isolated. So that must have stopped. So remember that there's some points in there that we need to work on, and there's different domains that come up in there. Now, Mary is in good physical health, but she's been neglecting her self-care, as we all do, due to her mental health challenges. When we don't feel well about ourselves, we neglect ourselves because we're not happy with ourselves. She has gained weight due to her medication and has been experiencing fatigue and being lethargic. Mary has a history of migraines and experiences occasional headaches. So we might discuss in that section, you're in pretty good physical health, Mary. What do you do for self-care? Oh, I've been neglecting my self-care. Okay. What sort of things did you used to do for your self-care? Let's always go back. What strategies were used in the past? What things does she like to do? You've gained a bit of weight from your medication. Got it. What medication do you use for your headaches? And is there anything that you like to do physically that you're able to do that may help you to improve your self-care? So self-care can be lots of things, but we need to do them to make it work. It might be as easy as, and I say this to the girls as well as the men in the room, what about a facial mask? Sometimes that makes you stop, put it on, lie back, wait for it to dry, you can't smile, and then take it off. You actually had to slow down, stop, be in the here and now, and wait for it to dry. And so it's a really good, relaxating thing for you to do to yourself, and it's good self-care. Okay, so we know her physical health is okay, but she's neglecting her self-care. So we need to work on that. The migraines, so long as she is seeing a GP and is managing them, do we need to go there? Not necessarily. We need to know about them and make sure that she is dealing with them according to her GP. Mary has a small social circle and has been feeling disconnected from her friends and family. She is hesitant to reach out for support and often isolates herself. And we do that. That's what happens to us. We isolate ourselves, and then we don't want anybody to come in and help us or do anything, even though we are craving it. All right. So if we look further at Mary, she has recently ended a toxic relationship and is feeling vulnerable and unsure of herself. If she were to involve a person in the plan, it would be her sister. So boom, we've got a family connection. She was isolated from family before, but if there was anybody in the family that she would contact, it would be her sister. So that's a strength. We need to note that. We need to note that. We also need to note that she's just come out of a toxic relationship. All right. So there was probably no consent or human rights in that relationship that were solid to keep it together. So if you've ever fallen out of a toxic relationship, you know that you are vulnerable at this time. You would have self-doubt. You would have a lot of feelings. So Mary has experienced intense emotions, fancy that, including feelings of sadness, hopelessness, and anxiety. She's been struggling to regulate her moods and has been engaging in impulsive behavior during manic episodes. She is fearful of the impact her mental health challenges may have on her future. Well, absolutely. If she's having manic episodes, she may need to go back and review her medications. All right. And that can be done with a GP. So what else can we find out about Mary? She was raised in a Christian family and has strong spiritual background. She has been feeling disconnected from her faith and is unsure of how to integrate it into her recovery journey. Boom. There's your cultural and spiritual well-being there that you are going to work on with Mary. She wants to. She's been disconnected, probably because of the toxic relationship, making an assumption there. But I'm going, could have been something that held her back from her religious beliefs. Could have been. So we need to look at that. And there's one of our domains. Mary is feeling overwhelmed or anxious about social interactions due to her bipolar disorder diagnosis. She expresses some hesitation and fear around engaging in social activities. She also identifies specific barriers such as a fear of judgment or rejection. She's just come out of a toxic relationship. She was probably judged and was rejected. So yes, she's going to have those feelings. She has difficulty managing her mood swings in social situations or challenges in finding social opportunities that align with her interests. So we look at that and go, okay, her bipolar diagnosis is causing her anxiety and she's frightened about how she's going to react in social situations, where the support person can come in that and support her through that. So that can be very powerful. So Mary is up to date with her medical checkups and is not in need of any assistance. Okay. She's still feeling anxious and overwhelmed in social interactions, but that fear may subside if she gets back into some of the other things that she liked to do. So, yes, Mary, is that so? What do you think Mary's strengths are? She is creative. Mary is a freelance graphic designer. She has a strong creative side and enjoys expressing herself through her work. Think about, okay, how are we going to get Mary back into society? Is there something she can do with that graphic designing that can maybe help someone? Or do you know of an organization that needs some graphic designing done? It may be suitable for Mary. So perseverance. Despite struggling with bipolar disorder, substance abuse, we just threw that in the last paragraph, and social isolation, Mary continues to work part-time as a graphic designer, which demonstrates her perseverance and dedication to her craft. Absolutely. She enjoys her work. If something were to happen to that work, that may disrupt that again. So self-awareness is another strength. By seeking help and being diagnosed with bipolar disorder, Mary demonstrates a level of self-awareness and a willingness to acknowledge and address her mental health challenges. It's when we go into denial about our mental health that it can become worse for us. Another strength of Mary. So she's got quite a few strengths, and we need to note these in her case notes. She's resourceful. Mary lives alone and works part-time, which suggests that she is resourceful and capable of managing her own affairs. I look at all that and go, she's just come out of a toxic relationship. She's isolated and lonely. She needs to reconnect with the domains that we've talked about today. So you would be discussing all these things with Mary and finding out all this information from her. Now, Mary knows what she's got to say, but how do you extract that from Mary? How do you ask Mary about certain things? How will you go about doing that? So that will be your role play, and you'll be toing and froing with Mary about how we can best help her. But until we know enough about Mary to do that, we need to keep asking her questions. Now, remember, in her case notes, they're her strengths. You've got them there. You've got her presenting issues and what is happening to her and what has happened to her. So you've got a lot of information on Mary that you can dissect and put into your case plan for Mary. Okay. Any questions on that role play? Done. All right, let's have a look at part 2 of this. So there's always more, isn't there? Hey, you just think, yeah, I've got this role play with Mary down pat, and oh, there's something else we have to do here. So whoever you got to play Mary is to continue playing Mary, and you are still the case manager, and you're going to see Mary. It takes more than 2 weeks to get all this organized, but you're seeing Mary and things have changed for Mary. So do you think Mary's case notes will change? Absolutely, they will. Sky's head's nearly on the desk now. That was gorgeous. She's traveled a long way. Don't give her a hard time. Goodness gracious. And it's nearly over, darling, nearly over. All right, so let's have a look. We've put all these things in place for Mary because we're good support workers. And she has now joined the local soccer team and has been attending weekly practices and games, which have helped her feel more connected to others and improve her physical health. So her weight's dropped a bit. Oh, feeling a bit more self-confidence, creeping back into herself. And sport does that. Exercise does that. Hey, it lets out all the right chemicals that we need to feel good about ourselves. She's also reached out to some old friends and has reconnected with them, which has helped her to expand her social circle and feel less isolated. Now that she's out of that toxic relationship, this could probably happen again. You know how we lose friends when we're in relationships? God, don't see them anymore. It's a shame. And sometimes when that relationship breaks up, we reconnect with people. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It helps us through those times. So Mary's been working with her healthcare provider to adjust her medication. So a healthcare provider is actually her doctor. It's the only one that can really do that, unless it is her. Who else can do that? Who else gives out medication? Anybody tell me? Who else gives out medication besides doctors?
Psychiatrist?
Excellent. Well done, Emma. Brilliant. A psychologist can't.
My brain was just thinking vet, and I knew this couldn't be the right answer.
They do give out medication, though, Sky. I'll give you that one. You get half a point for that one, Doc. Well done. So if Mary, now, where are we? So Mary started with a support group. Oh, here we go. All right. So Mary has worked with her healthcare provider to adjust her medication, which has helped to manage her migraines and fatigue more effectively, even though she said, my review's up to date, I don't need to do anything with my medication. So I think we may have suggested to her to double check with her GP about her headaches and her medication. So even though we may have dismissed it as, oh, she doesn't get many of them, it still can be a problem for her and stop her from doing what she wants. If Mary experiences a setback or struggles to meet a goal, she has been using meditation, not medication, meditation to assist her as part of her contingency plan. So if I'm struggling to meet a goal, instead of beating myself up about it and making myself feel really bad that I didn't get that goal, I'm going to just quiet my mind and stop giving myself a hard time and just meditate to reconnect with self so that I can think about clearly and logically what sort of contingency plan I need when I have a setback and struggle. I go, this is good stuff for us too. So Mary expresses gratitude. Well done, Mary. It's amazing what that can actually do for you, physically, cognitively, emotionally, in all those domains. So Mary expresses gratitude for the support and guidance provided by the student. Now, see, that should say case manager, because that's, you're not the student. Ooh. And credits their work together with helping her make positive changes in her life. Sometimes we just need somebody else to help us and support us without judging and belittling us. Hey, we work better with praise and reward. She appreciates the non-judgmental and supportive approach of the case manager, which has helped her feel more comfortable opening up about her struggles and seeking help, which she did not want to do. So you build enough rapport with Mary for her to move through her struggles and change her life. Well done. Mary also suggested that the case manager continue to incorporate her faith and cultural background into their conversations, as it has been an important source of strength and support for her. When we have religious beliefs, they are absolutely a strength. Mary comes from a culture where mental health issues are stigmatized and seeking help is discouraged. A lot of cultures do that too. They do not recognize mental health. It's very hard for them to recognize. It's very hard for people with mental health to recognize it as well. But when we're stigmatized and shunned upon or disrespected because of it, it doesn't make us any better with dealing with it. So Mary's job has started to slow down, which is causing her some anxiety around financial stability. So just at the end, when everything is going really well, the job's starting to fall away and slow down. So everything's going really well for Mary, but her job's starting to slow down. So in our case notes, in our second session with Mary, we're going to talk about all her strengths. We're going to talk about everything that she's done and how she's now put herself into sport, connecting with friends, and doing all these wonderful strength-based things. But then we're going to say, but I now, Mary, would like to refer you to maybe a job agency of your choice to see if you can get maybe extra work in graphic designing, because it's a specialized field. So that might be the only thing that you can refer Mary for in that second session with her. But what a big change it's been for Mary. How does everybody feel about the second session with Mary? Any comments?
Just asking from like real life experience, a lot of the times in our day-to-day lives, we have contingency plans, whether it's for work, personal use, whatever. We've all got a backup plan, whether we know it or not. When you're in that sitting, working with a client, how do you go about doing that instead of like without them feeling as if they're going to fail, or if you don't believe in them, we're going to set this up just in case? How do you phrase that? How do you make it a bit more warm and welcoming for that individual so that they want to continue working with you?
Yeah. So it may be, good question, Sky. So it may be, what have you done in the past that has helped you? And they may have something to say in that regard. So what have they done in the past that has worked? If something doesn't go right, Mary, do you think it might be a good idea to help your anxiety and becoming overwhelmed to have maybe a plan B in place, or like a contingency plan? And so that's not telling her she's going to fail, but it's about telling her to be resilient and prepared. So a contingency plan is not you're going to fail at A and we have to put in B. A contingency plan is there as a safety net. If something happens, yeah, so you could call it a safety net rather than a contingency plan.
So it's sort of just you've just got to give that reassurance, like, this is new, you know, you've got to learn how to do it. It's okay. It's like riding a bike, you know, it's just that new thing. Yeah, it's not a fail.
Absolutely.
It's just a learning curve.
Yeah.
It'll take
Well,
time.
I try not to look at anything as a failure because, well, did I learn something from doing that wrong? Absolutely, I did. So to me, it's not a failure. It's something that I'm growing with and learning. And if I said it was a failure, would I want to do it again? Absolutely not. I'd go, I failed at that. Why would I want to do that again? So try not to look at things as failures, and instill this into your clients too. And if you can instill it into the young people, even better, because they're very hard on themselves. So I do believe that instilling their own self-confidence in themselves. And it's not about, oh, you love yourself. Well, I hope you do, because you're not going to treat yourself well if you don't, you know. And I always say, if don't expect everybody else to look after you, you look after you, because you know what you want. Very important, very important. Okay, so that is your role play. Now, also in this particular module, when you go on placement, and placement's not until you've done at least 50% of your units, and then you can negotiate that as well. So there's no, right, you finished that, you've got to go and do this now. But there is a section in this unit that wants you to look at least 3 clients and have a look at all the wellbeing domains and write a wellbeing plan and a client plan. There is if you have a look at under placements for CHCMHS011, you will find the placement. And in that placement, you will see what they're asking for with the different clients. You don't have to worry about that now, but you need to remember that you have to do it. So it's like one of those things, oh, I've got to remember that when I'm on placement, I need to fill out this form to be finished. And it is a part of your placement. It has to be signed by the supervisor of where you do your placement. So it's everything that we've just talked about with Mary and what you need to put into that template. And it asks you for it. It is not all blank squares where you have to think and guess what has to go in there. Everything is listed. This is what we want. This is what we want you to discuss. All right. Now I'm going to stop recording. I talk far too much, and I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording.